So this is the rugged software development session. I'll explain in a minute what rugged is. It's going to be a little bit of a hybrid. I'm going to go at 1,000,000 miles an hour through a slide deck to leave room for some good discussion with some informed folks. So we're also passing around rugged stickers because it's not a cool meme unless it has stickers. But essentially, I'm Joshua Corman. I'm the research director for the 451 analyst group, specifically the enterprise security practice. I took that job in October. I'm actually not much into the analyst community. Been pretty hard on the analyst community for the last several years, but have been very passionate about security. So I decided that this was a good time with a bad economy and way too much cost and complexity that people might actually listen to some fresh thinking. So I'm trying to bring that and drive a little novel thought or try to be more strategic about the way we approach security. I talk to easily 1,000 CISOs a year, partly through my old job at IBM, and also partly due to work I do for the Institute for Applied Network Security out of Boston here, but lots of peer-to-peer roundtables. So your customers or the people you work for complain to me about what's wrong with security. I synthesize that, I summarize that, and I'm trying to do some good things about that. So I physically cannot do a security talk unless I do my 5 arrows first, but this came from talking to those thousands of CISOs over the last few years. This was basically just a shorthand that a CIO, a CFO, a CSO can talk to about security. And essentially the center of the bullseye here is cost and complexity. So I got into security because I want to fight bad guys. I want to be a superhero. Do not look very good in tights, but that's pretty much why a lot of us got in. There's some sort of history as to how we got here. I used to get brought in and talk about sophisticated malware. I did malware stuff at a stealth startup. All of a sudden, no one cared about sophisticated malware. All they cared about was the middle there, way too much cost and complexity. So in 2007, if you do industry surveys, about 4% of an IT budget was spent on security, 4% security tax. By 2009, it was like 12.6%. And that was before the economic downturn. So essentially, the CISOs ran out of money. Can't keep adding more security on the stack. There are 70 security products right now. It's way too many. The market won't bear it, it won't sustain it. And when you pair that with a bad economy, it's fundamentally altered the way spending and security has been approached. So the center of the bullseye here is not the latest rootkit, it's not Google China, it's not even PCI, it's how do we drive down that cost complexity? It's vendor consolidation, it's simplification, it's fewer products, etc. Now, where does that cost complexity come from? Well, that's the problem. We really haven't been paying attention to that. So, like I said, I got into security because I want to fight bad guys. So the evolving threat was really how most of this industry started. Think back to 1984 and the brain virus. I mean, it was sneaker net. It wasn't like blinding infection velocity, right? But that's where we started. And now we have very, very sophisticated, politically motivated, criminally motivated folks, et cetera. But you guys know this. What bothers me, and is the focus of my talk next week at Interop, is that compliance has completely eclipsed the threat landscape as the #1 driver of spending. We now fear the auditor more than the attacker. I mean, we are far more afraid of PCI than we are of Google China, right? And I'm not saying FUD's a good thing. But this used to be our North Star, and now compliance has actually competed for and dominated other forms of risk. Technology changes pretty often too. It's less often but more dramatic in impact. So what this might mean is x86 virtualization changes the way we have to deploy our legacy controls. Cloud computing, SaaS, iPhones, Blackberries, Twitter, frickin' Farmville. The pinnacle of human innovation is Farmville, guys, right? But technology has tremendous benefit, but also fundamentally impacts our risk posture and how many products we got to buy. The economics before the downturn economy really meant that there's a shift in CapEx spending to OpEx spending. There was the effects of globalization. There were just different factors in the environment, in the industry, where we were spending money differently, accounting for things differently, and it became a constraint for how we solved the first three. But really, when you talk to a C-level, they don't care about any of those four. All they care about is, what does my board of directors want? What do my shareholders want? What does my CEO want? What's going on in my industry? If it's healthcare, they care about the digitization of records. If it was banking a couple of years ago, it was M&A and integrating all your acquisitions. But the confluence of these things has ballooned security from 4% of our budgets to 12% of our budgets. And it's only going to keep getting bigger if we don't do something smarter. So typically I ask people to, no matter what the trigger is, if it's a threat change like Google China, if it's a technology change like SaaS adoption, marshal your way through and ask the right questions around these. The best example I used to use was after Hurricane Katrina, the business decided, it was a board of directors decision, to do a disaster recovery program. Well, if you look at the economics, it would be financially irresponsible to build a fully redundant physical data center. So you go to technology and you embrace a nascent, unproven x86 virtualization technology, of which most of your legacy security controls don't work yet. And then, by the way, you have all this fun stuff like live migration and dynamism in offline systems and offline patching, and it becomes more complex. And the bad guys take advantage of our diminished security posture. But more important than the bad guys, the auditors also still, 6 years after people started adopting this stuff, still won't tell you how to adopt it in a compliant way. There's still no guidance from even PCI. So people would deploy these and find themselves getting fined for deploying it improperly. So if you don't really marshal your way through, you can't really drive that down. So thank you for tolerating the stump speech, but I can't have a conversation about security without us understanding that we are beset on all sides by constant and turbulent change. So how does that bring us to rugged? Well, I was talking to two other guys and lamenting last year at RSA. I don't know about you, but if you go to RSA each year, I want to quit security at RSA. And it's basically that we have a highly volatile, ever-changing landscape, like I just described in the previous slide, but we have an incredibly static and unchanging approach. If you take the keynotes from last year, or 2 years ago, or 4 years ago, remove the soundbite like cloud, or APT, or GRC, virtualization, and it's going to be the exact same speech. It's pathetic. So I was lamenting with these two guys at the Greylock party, and I said, you know, when are we ever going to get smarter? We just keep fighting the heads of the Hydra instead of going for the heart. We put out thousands and thousands of patches for thousands and thousands of vulnerabilities. And, you know, hooray for web app firewalls, and no offense to anyone in here who sells them or uses them, but I was also fairly upset because web app firewalls had a very, very good year because they were anointed by the PCI Council. Whereas other really relevant technologies were taking a beating last year because they weren't required. Out of those 70 product markets I mentioned before, 8 categories are required. That means there's 8 winners and 62 losers. So I was pretty upset, and I just met Jeff Williams, who's here in the middle. He's the chair of OWASP. And David Rice and I have been friends for a few years. He's the author of Geekonomics. He's a former Navy intelligence guy and NSA crypto guy. He wrote a pretty good book called Geekonomics. I disagree with parts of it, and I liked others. And I said, you know, until we can actually change the hearts and minds of the people making software, we're going to eternally be band-aiding all this stuff. So I went back to that Hydra, right? So we can have thousands and thousands of patches for thousands and thousands of holes in software, or we can try to get to the root cause. We're never going to make software perfect. I have no delusions about that. But I said, good for you, Jeff. You're the chair of OWASP. Awesome. You've been preaching to the choir, and 1% of the programmers on the planet are really, really well informed about the top 10 OWASP flaws. Awesome. You're doing a great job. But for us to be successful, we got to get to the other 99%. And that wasn't really a negative message. We were being surly because we were upset by all the keynotes. So Rice said, you know, what we're missing is we don't have a meme. So if you don't know what a meme is, just gaze at that for a little while. No one has a great definition for a meme. But to me, a meme is really just a contagious idea, a contagious philosophy or value set. Some work, some don't. Maybe rugged will fall on the ground and just wither and die. Maybe it'll be sticky and it'll actually tap into someone's brain or value set. So far, it's been pretty sticky. So here's an example of a meme, right? I'm going to go really quickly. So the pirates are attacking the U.S. ships off the coast of Africa. They've broken a 100-year truce, right? What the pirates know, the internet memes. First, it starts with pirates, then zombies, then unicorn-riding robots. Next, there's bloodthirsty lolcats jumping out of rafflecopters and nom-nomming on our tracheas, right? According to internet lore, there's only one thing that can stop a pirate. What, scurvy? A remedial reading comprehension test? Anyone know the answer? What can stop a pirate? Ninjas, right? All right, so basically that's an example of an internet meme, but there's all sorts of memes, and some of them catch on. It might be some kid in New Jersey wearing his baseball cap sideways. Next thing you know, a kid in South Africa is doing the same thing. They never met. It's really just these contagious concepts or archetypes in the human brain. So, you know, beyond that, we've kind of hit a turning point, and I'm not trying to use FUD. I'm actually quite allergic to FUD. In fact, if you come to my B-Sides talk, I'm going to do a frontal assault on FUD in the echo chamber. But you know, Google China got some attention, some other things like this. So essentially the point is, and anyone who's ever heard me talk before says we can't continue to hide behind our firewalls, right? We have a very Gen 1 technology against a very